Hey, this is Gary from Videoguys. Welcome to today's show, Videoguys Live. Give us 15 to 30 minutes. We're going to teach you all about the technology we sell and the stuff we do. And today we're real excited because we have a special guest, Ryan from MMG, and they have done an incredible multi-camera, multi-area, multi-everything NDI project. Probably one of the largest hybrid projects we've ever learned of. We learned about this project in interviews we had with some of our guests during NDI November. And Ryan was gracious enough to get us on the show. So Ryan, welcome aboard. 26 countries smoothly with NDI. I mean, that's wow.
Yeah, I mean, pretty pleased with that, to be honest. I think one of the things is that we knew the scale of what we were hitting. But we've had to be sort of fairly hush, really, in terms of the project itself. But it kind of got to the point where we just wanted to tell people and let people know the scale of what's possible now with the technologies that are there, especially being involved in like the R&D within other bits like, Atomos, BirdDog, that kind of thing. Yeah, so we did.
Now, Atomos, BirdDog, both Australian companies. You're not from Australia. You guys are in the UK, correct?
That's right, yeah. So there's a sense of irony there as well, I suppose. But we started off our conversations early on with Eamon at the time, with BirdDog. And we kind of sort of walked a little journey that led us through BirdDog and Atomos within that world and within NDI, particularly at the time when COVID was kicking in. And we, as a company, had to pivot our business from being in-person event, providing projectors, PAs, all that kind of thing, into what I thought was a very, very new territory where that in-person might not even come back. And as NDI became a thing, I was there testing it out and working out how that was all going to come together with vMix and integrate into, live production, hybrid, virtual, that kind of thing.
And we saw the same thing, and Dr. Cross, the inventor so much of NDI, really said it best a few years ago on our NDI November keynote, and that was, it wasn't that the technology leapt ahead, it was the adoption leapt ahead by 5 years during COVID, and then the technology had to kind of catch up. And everyone during COVID, as people started coming back, wanted that hybrid experience, but it wasn't so easy to do till kind of recently. So the fact that you guys have done this, I think is a really proof of concept for the whole world to see that you really can do a massive hybrid event where you have people in person and people virtual both getting a great show. A lot of times you'll do a hybrid event where it's really the live people there like it, and the people remote are like, I don't get it. I was just like, this didn't provide anything. Or they work so hard on the remote part for the virtual audience that the live show, is missing. You guys nailed it with both. So tell us about this project you guys did. I mean, the scope and scale is just remarkable.
Yeah, I mean, so it had 150 events. Now, these were a mixture of hybrid and virtual events. So think about that, like separate it out into the fact that each one was a standalone event. They all ran essentially back to back over the course of days, 24 hours a day on 6 streams that were running concurrently. Now, the thing was that we did is that we took NDI within Atomos products, because we were working with them on actually the integration of that and the sort of NDI stuff that you're just starting to see now. And we looked at their products in a way that I don't know if everyone else has, certainly not without NDI, they wouldn't have this concept, but being like NDI encoders and decoders with video screens that you can monitor in real time. So it gives you a literal point-to-point test on that signal flow. But also like using things like RTMP so that you've got backup devices in place, is key. I mean, to dig a little bit sort of more top level with the whole thing, essentially what we had to do was make sure that we had an incredibly robust system that could not fail to deliver these events one after the other with the same result, high levels of audience engagement, people in the room all connected, people online able to see what was going on and interact via Q&A functions as well. But a lot of that came from just making sure everything was very simple. and we only use what we had to use, and it was deployed in the right way. But I suppose in a way, it's kind of lucky that we've got 5 years of experience working with all of these things, because when lockdown kicked in way back with, COVID, we were busy working on the R&D of how to do these things. So we, literally plugging in MacBooks, analog sound desks, whatever we could use to change things and work in new ways. I mean, the biggest thing for us was that of 150 events, the fail rate, like we literally had 2 hiccups. And those things were all identified because of NDI and because of the monitoring that we had in the main control, before they actually became problems. So we were able to resolve them in the background. Meanwhile, no one on the sort of endpoints knew any the wiser.
Yep. Now, I've always talked about NDI. I love that it's got its scalability and flexibility. You guys kind of used it for monitor control and redundancy. Let's dig a little deeper into that, because that's where I really think you guys pushed the envelope and took NDI to a different level, where I think, sort of like an Atomos can even benefit from that on a production lot.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, this is the genius of NDI from my point of view, is that if you put a feed onto the network, then what you're actually doing is you're making it accessible to everything within that infrastructure. So if you've got nodes deployed to deliver these events, if one has an issue, you can redirect it to another one instantaneously. You can run duplicate backups. But then the other thing is that you can also encode at different points. So we can run fixed video cards, SDI, HDMI, as one layer of backup. But the device producing that can also encode NDI, which then allows it to be pulled across multiple places. Now, one of the things that was incredibly useful for was the interface which we were using, which essentially was Teams to actually bring signals into us in a hybrid sense. Now, arguably, that's not the sort of ultimate way to do that in a broadcast standard, but the reason we did do that is because the corporation that we were working with already had Teams, and this is like something that comes up all the time as well. Companies have already got Teams accounts, they already have Microsoft licenses, so therefore they want it to be on Teams. Yeah, you can see there in the picture, like you've got the Atomos Ninja there encoding the NDI. And then we're able to take that signal into multiple machines at the same time, while still running a hot backup that's running off a completely different system, which is the video card. And then combine that with the fact that you've got backup NDIs running off a vMix, like the levels at which everything becomes redundant is really significant.
I gotta tell you, using the Shoguns and the Ninjas as like redundancy for encoding, to me, absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. That was something that, didn't even cross my mind as something, that people would be doing. But, did any time during the show, did you need to use one of those Shoguns as a redundant stream, or did you manage to avoid that?
So we didn't use them as a redundant stream, but the confidence of them being there was amazing. Now, obviously, within the infrastructure of our studio environment, we've got redundancy built in. So we've got several lines of internet, we've got cellular backups and that as well. So the idea is just to make something that cannot fall over. So, luckily we didn't have to. But there have been times on site for other productions that we've done where we have. Because the internet within the area that we're working in isn't as good, wasn't as robust, and then we're able to run that using like a 5G cellular device and just pump the signal in that way, which is remarkable. Like you say, the idea that you can create backups from something that isn't actually just a device for streaming. It's got so many other applications. We're actually spending a bit of time learning how to use them as they were intended now as well, because we kind of went I think we went the wrong way. We came in and we're like, right, what's this, what can we do with it, and then realized that actually there were many other applications that were meant to be, so we're just sort of going back on that now, really.
I think it's funny because you pivoted to Atomos field recorders as phenomenal recorders and good with the color space and all that great stuff. And they're pivoting into NDI, which is why what you did was so incredible with that. Now, the gear you used was mainly Shoguns and Flexes and Ninjas, but I also see behind you,
Hmm.
you have a BirdDog X5 camera. Was that integrated? I don't think that was shipping when you did this event, correct?
That was not integrated. That was hand delivered by I don't know if you know BirdDog Phil Lane.
Yep.
Yeah, so he delivered that to our studio a couple of days ago. Actually, these are like what we consider to be the little bonus Christmas fun. So
And I see
we're just
you
starting
guys.
to get
I
used
can
to
see you
them.
guys loving those because as well as being a phenomenal NDI camera, PTZ camera, they do give you that decode so you can use it for to plug a monitor in for a reference monitor also. Which for what my gears are
Hmm.
spinning as I'm seeing what you're doing, you're like this baby cuts out 3 pieces of gear in one, right? You don't need it's the
Yeah,
camera,
yeah,
it's the
yeah.
encoder, and it'll power the reference monitor.
Well, I mean, the first thing that we're sort of stepping on to the idea is that because camera positions from a sort of live production capacity tend to be, at the side of the room, halfway down, that kind of thing, which also ties in perfectly with relay screens for
Yeah.
people to see, things. It means we can distribute the signal over network, do an NDI decode, and that literally will drop for independent control of the screens in the room. So it just take things to another level in that regard as well, which I think is super cool, especially with HX3,
Yeah. Now, tremendous job, and we've talked about the gear, but how many people were in, how many actual people did you have working on the show in total? I think that's a part of this that kind of people forget about when they talk about this. You had people in
They
each
do, yeah.
country. I mean, talk about how many people. I mean, some of them, I guess, are part-time, some full-time, but
Well,
how many people were deployed?
so from our side, we had 25 people. Now that's studio based. In terms of like, if you actually start incorporating the other AV companies
Yep.
that are involved on site in these 26 locations, I mean, it would be up into the hundreds. So we had to actually go through quite a long process where we identified the AV companies of each of these, sort of solo events, and actually took them through an onboarding process where we tested their signals. But not just that, we also had to check their capabilities within the kind of protocol that we were saying about sending video, because sometimes we forget that it's not day to day to everyone else to just swap a video signal into an NDI, flip a camera and off we go, or send SRT signals and make sure that they're all stable basically.
Now, AV over IP is becoming more and more, but I would imagine that there were certain AV companies who just were still old baseband guys and other guys who were like just chomping at the bit to be a part of this because they were on that same kind of track. And they were like, I will do this show and we'll learn from these guys.
Well, I think that's it really. Everyone did take our lead. They did listen, because they knew that we'd done it before and that we were set to do it the same way, but with a few more improvements just because of sort of technology as it's developed. There's definitely some that were totally like no idea. But then I think in certain countries there's not as high a demand at the moment for virtual or hybrid, solely because certain companies within countries are slower to sort of uptake on certain things. Because you've got to remember that I think there's like a new breed of production company, which is one that is sort of slightly smaller but able to pivot really quickly and adopt the technologies, carry out the R&D. And then there's other companies as well that are more globalized that take a little bit longer for certain things to filter through, even to the point of, changes of equipment within the warehouses, Like there's a lot of people that have got a lot of switches, for example, that, they still want to go out, they still want to use.
Yeah.
So it's not quite the right time yet to fully integrate, but I don't think it's going to be that long before you see systems that are just deployed on fiber. Certainly from our point of view, we're working on like zero latency IMAG. That's what we want over network.
That's kind of like a holy grail, the zero latency IMAG. And with HX3, we're getting a lot closer. We're not quite there, but we're a lot closer.
Yeah. No, definitely watch this space because that's something that we are working on. So.
See, here in the States, we've seen hybrid being used very, very well in worship, where churches are doing it. And they sometimes will have a separate system for IMAG versus streaming for those very problems you've talked about. But we haven't really seen our event production companies catch on the way you'd think you would in a big country like the US. A lot of them have been very resistant to AV over IP. And I think that's, you hit the nail on the head. It's because they know what works. They've got their cookbook, they've got their formula, and they're just making the event fit their formula. And I think the problem is there's a whole lot of creativity in opening up to a much wider capability of NDI. Can you just talk about how it just lets you do a better, more elaborate, more creative production?
Well, I think that in reality, it allows you to do a lot of things you couldn't before, like in terms of even the simple things like screen shares from lecterns, you know, like just as a bottom level. Previously, that was actually quite a challenge, like in terms of making sure the EDIDs were there and they could hot swap it and everything would work. Now you can literally send an NDI to a monitor in front of them or an iPad, and they could even start drawing on it and do that in real time, you know. But I think the real kind of capabilities in the live sector with NDI is where you start using the fact that you've got one signal that goes everywhere. That's the true power of it, because you can take one signal in and that actually does the whole of the production team. And then if you're backing that up, take two, why not? But you don't need to do all this Y split on SDI and everything else to achieve the same effect.
So Ryan, I want to put you on the spot, and I love doing this because you're not representing a vendor or someone who's a scientist developer in our industry. So your answer, you don't have to worry about anything. I mean, don't violate any NDAs or that you may have, but you know, what is like the number? Give me like 2 or 3 expansions of the technology that you're hoping to see in 2025, and what you think you'll see. You know, I always, my biggest thing from the beginning was I wanted NDI audio. I was like, why don't we have like a Mackie mixer with flying faders that's all NDI? You know, Dante's had it. They're leading the pack. I think we're seeing NDI catch up a little bit. I think we're seeing a world where Dante and NDI are finally going to start playing well together. What are your thoughts on, you know, 2025? What are the 2 or 3 things you'd really love to see come in this technology for you as an event hybrid, as a hybrid event producer?
So the big one is the zero latency iMag, because if we can deploy that, it'll have a very big cost impact as well for the hybrid virtual switch, because you won't then be talking about deploying, you know, 2 layers of cameras, will you? But the other thing that I'm particularly, you know, interested in, and that I'd love to see, we're going to put sort of a fair amount of effort into sort of developing something sort of to this extent, is a new breed of switcher that is able to process NDI as the primary, so that within video world, the primary signal is NDI, and that we're deploying NDI out to screens and potentially as well to LED walls, which is at the moment, I would say, the stopping point. The moment there's an LED wall involved, that output is actually like, no, we need an E3 there. And that can receive a signal from vMix or something else, and we'll pip it and things like that. But we can't necessarily just send an NDI signal and put it onto a LED screen, you know?
I love that one, because we just started a relationship with Absent with their video walls. And one of the things that I told them they need to get the developers doing is realizing that the video processing should be done NDI to the wall. And I think with, you know, 4K and UHD and what's out there now on NDI, I think it's ready to do it. I think someone's got to pick up the you know, the baton and figure out how it gets done. But I definitely love where you're going with that. I agree with you completely on that one, 100%. Keep pushing, because they need to hear it from customers who use these video walls more than from me, people who sell video walls. Cool. Anything else? Every time I have a guest on the show, on the wrap up, I like to say the floor is yours. You know, talk about your company, any big projects you're working on next year, or just about being on this show. But thank you so much. It was a great show. I think people learned a lot about just how the redundancy, the monitoring, and the flexibility and the scalability, you guys have proven it works at, you know, 126 countries, 200 different people and setups and all that. So great job, and the floor is yours.
Cool. Thanks, mate. I mean, in reality, what we'd like to do now is just open the floor for a bigger conversation, really. So if anyone wants to reach out and sort of explore more solutions for hybrid virtual events with ourselves, then obviously, you know, drop us a line. But at the same time, if anyone wants to speak to us more about products they've got that they think that NDI could integrate into, and how we might pull that into the AV production sector. That's again something we'd love to continue working on. So that's kind of our goal. So get in touch.
Yep, and I think you picked two great partners in Atomos and BirdDog. We joked in the beginning of the show that they're from down under, and you're from the UK and I'm from the US, but either way, they do a great job. So thank you so much, Ryan, for being on the show. This is Gary from Videoguys reminding everyone, like us, love us on Facebook, YouTube, sign up, subscribe. That way you'll know every Tuesday at 3 p.m. you can watch our show. This is Gary from Videoguys. Ryan, thank you so much. Peace.
Videoguys is available Monday through Friday. Give us a call at 1-800-323-2325. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Instagram to stay connected with all of our updates. And you can like us on Facebook. Keep an eye out for our live videos, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks for watching.